Unite or Die: How 13 States Became a Nation. Forest Lakes Elementary School, tonight only. Unite or Die, 7:30 p.m. On September 3, 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed, officially ending the American Revolution. 13 colonies had won their independence from England. A new country was born. Hooray, freedom! Now we can govern ourselves. Are we ready? George Washington, the commander of the Continental Army, said goodbye to his troops and went back to his home, Mount Vernon, in Virginia. The new country was called the United States of America, but it was not united. Each state had its own leaders and its own government. The states were like 13 separate countries. Shouldn't someone be in charge? We're on our own now. I'll make my own decisions, thank you very much. I know what's best for me. Who am I, a Virginian or an American? We just got rid of King George. We don't want anyone telling us what to do. The country operated under a document called the Articles of Confederation. This political system gave the national government very little power. Each state took care of its own business without interference or help from anyone. Independence, that's what we fought for. I love being my own boss. But being 13 independent states had its drawbacks. Without a strong national government, it wasn't easy for the states to trade with one another or with foreign countries. When I go to Rhode Island, they won't take my money. Of course not. Your money is worthless here. Then how can we do business with each other? Speaking of business, I want to sell goods to Europe. Me too. So do I. Don't we need a treaty to trade? Who can negotiate for all of us? There was no one to settle disagreements over borders and trade. There was no one to provide help if a state was in trouble. How can we decide once and for all who owns what? New Hampshire is trying to claim land that belongs to me. Not true, that land belongs to me. You think you have problems. I have a rebellion on my hands. A man named Daniel Shays and his angry mob of farmers are threatening me. Can the government help? Sorry, you'll have to take care of Daniel Shays yourself. Whose ships have the right to sail on the Potomac River? Yours or mine? Maybe it's time we sat down to talk about things. In September 1786, delegates from Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virginia, New Jersey, and New York gathered in Annapolis, Maryland. They discussed the problems among the states and identified what had to be done. We're like a monster with 13 heads. I wouldn't go that far. We're more like a blind octopus with 13 arms. The Articles of Confederation make the national government helpless and hopeless. We need a government that works. But we only have 5 states represented here. What can we do? We can call another convention. We can ask everyone to come and help revise the Articles of Confederation. That's an excellent idea. Let's meet in Philadelphia in the same hall where the Declaration of Independence was signed. The convention began on May 25, 1787. 12 states sent delegates. But not me. I don't want anything to do with the suspicious nonsense. There were 55 delegates in all, including some of the most brilliant minds in the country. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, Roger Sherman, George Mason, George Washington, and Benjamin Franklin. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were in Europe, however, serving as ambassadors. 81 years old and still full of style. Make way for the Honorable Benjamin Franklin. Look, he's being carried to the State House in a fancy sedan chair. How chic. There's George Washington. You know, this meeting is important if he's here. Everybody admires the general. Let's put him in charge of this assembly. As president of the convention, George Washington sat in a beautiful carved chair. He had a front row seat for all the arguments. "I'm burning up in here. Can't we open a window?" "We can't open the windows. The flies will get in." "What about opening a door? I need some air." "The doors are locked. Remember, we all voted to keep our meeting secret." Doors were locked and guards were stationed outside. There were no meetings with the press. The delegates were serious about keeping their conversation private. "I feel like a prisoner. There's a guard outside." "We better keep an eye on old Ben Franklin. He's got a loose tongue." "Stop your complaining. Do you want the whole country to know we're changing the government?" Virginia had an idea so different. It would have to replace the Articles of Confederation rather than revise them. "I am proud to propose the Virginia Plan. It's a government with 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judicial." 3 branches, that's interesting. Tell us more. "The executive branch will be headed by a president to carry out the laws. The legislative branch will have a Congress with 2 houses to make the laws, and the judicial branch will have a Supreme Court to settle disagreements." I'm all for having a president. We can't go on being an octopus with all arms and no head, but what about 2 House legislator? Is that a good idea? The British Parliament has 2 houses. Most of our states have 2 House legislators. Absolutely. With 2 houses, every law is voted on twice. The Virginia Plan called for a new way of thinking. The states would have to give up some of their individual power in favor of a strong national government. The Virginia Plan has real potential. No, it doesn't. Did you see how the votes in Congress will be decided? This wasn't an easy idea to accept, especially for the small states like New Jersey and Delaware, who were afraid the big states would outvote them in Congress. Sure, the number of delegates will be based on population. What's wrong with that? Everything. If you have more delegates, you'll have more votes than I do. But you're not even half my size. Why should you have the same number of votes? The smaller states counterattacked by presenting the New Jersey Plan. I propose a one-house Congress where every state, no matter how small, has the same vote. We're not going to let you big states bully us. My citizens are just as important as yours. Without equal representation, my vote will be ignored. But this country should be governed by the people. That means states with more people should have more say in Congress. Sounds reasonable to me. My ears hurt. The big states and the small states argued for weeks. Delegates became discouraged. George Washington looked haggard, as if he were reliving the terrible days at Valley Forge. If we can't agree on anything, how can we stay one country? But we could have even bigger problems if we break apart. Will the United States of America survive? Fortunately, the Connecticut delegation came to the rescue. It better be a good one. The hot air in here is killing me. I have an idea. What about a Congress with 2 houses? Where have you been? The Virginia Plan already calls for a 2-house legislator. Think about it. With 2 houses, we can have 2 kinds of representation. It's a compromise, not a secret. The House of Representatives can be based on population. The Senate can have 2 delegates for every state. I get it. What? What do you get? Let me in on the secret. So every state, no matter how small, will have 2 votes in the Senate, but states with more people will have more delegates in the House of Representatives. I can live with that. I can too. A major hurdle had been overcome. The delegates now had a framework for a new constitution, but there were still many other decisions to be made. How long should the president's term in office be? What should Congress be in charge of? Can we get rid of the president if we have to? What if Congress passes bad laws? How do we stop them? What What about power? Who will have the most, the president, Congress, or the Supreme Court? Hold on. If someone has too much power, we're right back where we started, fighting tyranny. The powers among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches were carefully separated and balanced in the new Constitution. For instance, the president can veto a law passed by Congress. Congress can remove a president from office if he misbehaves. Only Congress, not the president, can declare war. And the judicial branch has the power to settle disagreements between the other branches. What about my state government? I won't sign this document if you take away all my power. Calm down. The Constitution still allows us to make laws to meet the local needs of our people. But the Constitution will be the supreme law of the land, and we won't be allowed to pass a law that conflicts with it. That's the whole point. The national government will finally be in charge. Are you sure this is the right thing? The delegates worried about many details of the new government. In the end, they realized that no document could be made perfect for all future generations. We need a way to make amendments to the Constitution to take care of problems that don't exist yet. True, but if we all have to agree on each change, we could be in for big trouble. Because it would be nearly impossible to get unanimous approval for all changes. The Constitution says amendments become law if ratified, formally accepted, by 3/4 of the states. Will every state have to ratify the Constitution? Rhode Island isn't even here. How can that happen? The final section of the Constitution, Article 7, says that the document would become law when 9 out of the 13 states ratify it. So we're finished? Yep, it's time to get this ball rolling. Who will be the first to sign? George Washington, of course. On September 17, 1787, the United States Constitution was signed by representatives of 12 states. The ratification process was lengthy, but eventually all 13 states approved the Constitution, even Rhode Island. A new government was born, the United States of America, united at last and ready to govern ourselves.